Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this video in our series about issues related to the COVID-19 virus in Vermont. Today, I have Tanya Vhovsky, who is a school therapist at Charlotte Central School, and she also has a private practice in Essex, primarily serving teenagers. She's with me today to answer questions that a number of Vermonters have shared with me, reached out to me about how to address their own and their kids' mental health during these really challenging times. Thank you for joining me, Tanya.
Thanks so much for having me, David. It's nice to be here.
This is obviously a very different and new situation for all of us, especially I would think for kids. We just heard notice that schools are now going to be closed all the way through the end of the year. And as a counselor for school age kids, but also as a counselor in general, give some advice to us adults, how would you advise people deal with the worries and stress of the present situation?
Well, there's a lot of really important things, and I think it's important to acknowledge that it is stressful and to find age-appropriate ways to connect kids to the information. I think sometimes as adults, we try to protect kids from tough things, and that isn't always helpful. It's actually sometimes helpful to give them the information and process that information with them. And so I think acknowledging that it is difficult, but also making time for fun and humor and just acknowledging that we have this extra time together because we're not in school, and having realistic expectations of ourselves is also really important. It's not realistic to expect a child to sit in front of a screen for 7 hours as they would and learn as they would in school. 1 to 2 hours for a child in the K-4 grades is about all that can be expected in these situations, and really no more than 4 for older teenagers. So really building in outdoor time and time to learn life skills, whether it's baking or dancing, but really connecting to each kid in ways that they can learn that aren't just sitting in front of a screen.
Can you maybe walk us through some of the different tools and techniques that parents can use and to help their children deal with their stressful situations in this moment?
It's really all about being mindful and being present and grounding ourselves. And I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. One of my favorite, really quick, easy ways to do that, that I do with kids a lot, actually, we call it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding. I like it because you have 5 fingers and 5 senses, so it's easy to remember even when you're stressed. And the idea is that you bring yourself and sort of think about your breath, and then stop and look for 5 things that you can see in the space that you're in right now, and then moving to 4 things that you can touch and actually touching them. So like right now I can touch the chair that I'm in and I can feel it, and I notice that my feet are on the ground. And so 4 of those things that I can touch, and then listening for 3 things in the space we're in that we can hear, and then 2 things that we could smell, and then stopping and sort of checking in, like, what does my mouth taste like right now? And the idea is that it brings your thoughts to your current space and time, and it brings you back into your body. And you can do it with nobody noticing that you're doing it. You can do it anywhere. You don't need any tools. And you can just really try to bring yourself back to the present. So that's one of my favorites that I do with kids. But there's so many different ways. You can go for a nice walk and really try to think about, rather than being worried, your worries will be there when you're done, but maybe take 10 minutes and walk and notice, it's spring out, the sun is shining. What are the plants that I see right now? And so really any way that you can slow your thoughts down and bring yourself to right here, right now.
What are some of the resources that you would suggest to parents to keep up their children's spirits and stay mentally healthy? And maybe it's to run around the house with your kid and tickle fights and so forth. But what are some other suggestions you might have that folks could do?
So there's a lot happening right now that wouldn't normally actually be accessible to people because we are all forced into this virtual world. And so there's all kinds of different ways to be connected. There are virtual museum tours happening. I was talking to a kid that I support who got to tour a museum in Russia, and normally would never get to do that. But because these things are becoming virtual, we are able to see and do things from the comfort of our homes that we might not normally be able to do. So plugging into things that kids are interested in. I know the Smithsonian just became virtually tourable in some, so finding ways to plug into things that kids are really interested in. And also, again, finding that humor and levity and ability to be connected And really, I've tried to work with all of the families I'm working with in reframing social distancing as physical distancing. We're putting physical distance, but we've got to be in solidarity together socially. And so finding the ways to stay connected and have this totally abnormal situation be as normal as possible. And so I'm really encouraging families to keep their routines, as easy as it might be to stay in your pajamas all day and sit on the couch. Don't get up and take a shower, get ready for the day, and have a schedule and a plan that you follow every day. And obviously it's going to look a little bit different because, as I said earlier, we shouldn't just sit in front of our computer for 7 hours, but having, getting up and having breakfast and doing a little bit of work and then having outside time and then doing a little bit of work, but really keeping that routine is really important, as well as finding ways to connect. I know that there are virtual support groups that are happening. I know that I've had to get really creative with my own way of staying connected, but just being home completely isolated is a recipe for really severe anxiety, depression, and worry.
When we go out for a walk each day, there's often other people walking on the same road. We obviously stay opposite sides of the road and keep appropriate spatial distancing, as you've said. But just saying hello to some neighbors for a few minutes does a lot. And I partly bring that up, we're talking a lot about virtual tours and virtual meetings. Unfortunately, of course, a lot of Vermont doesn't have the broadband capacity to do that. And so I'm wondering, other suggestions that some of these kinds of meetings, we're doing this through Zoom, which is visual, but you can also join these kinds of meetings through a phone for those that don't have virtual capacity, so, the visual broadband to do it. But other thoughts, there's maybe a daily walk outside. Some folks hunt, I'm thinking, in terms of, go out. If you're someone who's going to teach your kid about hunting, well, today's not a bad day to go outside and teach gun safety and things like that. So other suggestions or ideas?
Board games are an awesome idea. And I've really tried to connect families and to the opportunity in this time. Maybe there's that thing you've always wanted to learn and you just never have had the time for. Well, now's the time, and so a lot of families are connecting to where are the places where they can pick up a new skill or learn something and really engage their minds. I've got families who are going to teach their kid how to play guitar. And it's also a time that we can impart the skills that we have on, to our children, because so frequently we're running in a million different directions and that has stopped. So I think we can also embrace and enjoy the slow down a little bit and really look for those places to build skills. Like you said, teaching your kid how to go hunting, or teaching your child about the farm, if maybe that's not something they know as much about as you might normally want them to, and really connecting to reconnecting as people, connecting your skills to their interests and really just embracing this time we have. I think a lot of times it's easy to get focused on like how challenging it is. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and to grieve the real losses that people are having. I know a lot of the seniors that I'm talking to are really sad about what their senior year looks like. They're missing graduations and missing proms, and parents are feeling that too. And so really, I think holding the space to grieve that, but then also looking for the opportunities that wouldn't normally be present if we were running at our normal pace.
And obviously high school graduation is such a hallmark in life, such a moment. So I'm sure some of those teenagers you're working with, that's been tough. What specific resources do you have or would you suggest for Vermonters for mental health in general? Are there websites? Are there books?
So there's a couple of places that I think are important to be aware of. The Vermont Department of Health keeps a link for all crisis resources. I know Chittenden County's because that's where I am, which is First Call for Chittenden County, but every county has their own crisis resource. So if people are feeling really at the end of the rope and like they really need immediate support, reaching out to their local mental health crisis resource is a place to do that. The Vermont Support Line, which is something I'm really familiar with because I developed that many years ago now, is open every day from 3 p.m. till 6 a.m. and it's staffed by people who have also struggled with anxiety or depression or some, mental health challenge. They're well trained to just be there and listen and really provide support. I've also seen quarantine chat pop up. It was created specifically so people could call or text and be able to connect with another person. I know there's mutual aid efforts popping up in a lot of
Right.
communities to really provide neighbor to neighbor support. So, finding out what your local effort is, and if it's not already happening, if I'm someone who feels best when I'm doing something. And so I jumped in and decided to organize mutual aid in my neighborhood because it wasn't already happening. And so finding, who are you and when do you feel your best and what are the ways
Right.
that you can plug in. And there's a lot of resources that across the state that are always there. And then there's some new stuff coming up because people are just so aware that this is hard. We've never experienced this in this country in my
Right.
lifetime, nothing
Right.
like it. And so we're all kind of figuring it out together. So I also think it's really important to be kind to ourselves and to be kinder than maybe we need to with others. We're all stressed and we don't know the answers, and that's really uncomfortable for people want to know what to expect, and right now
Yeah.
everything's unexpected and the ground is always moving. So I think it's okay not to be as productive as you might normally feel. It's okay to be a little bit sad or upset or to feel anxious. I think that's one of the really important things we forget, is that it's okay to be anxious. You'll be okay. And if you're feeling that, it's okay to stop and feel it. We don't have to hide from that. We don't have to pretend it doesn't exist. We can stop and say, no, I am really worried. And of course I'm really worried.
Is there anything else you'd want to share with parents in regards to the mental health of their kids right now, taking care of their kids, taking care of themselves, maybe?
That's the most important thing. For us to have kids that are doing well, we have to be doing well. And I think it is so frequent that we, like I said, we try to protect our kids and we try to give, and we have to take care of ourselves or we run out of anything to give. It's something I find myself saying at school a lot. To have healthy kids, we need healthy adults. And so I
Hmm.
think that's the big thing, is to remember to take care of yourself, to
Hmm.
remember to take that walk, to remember to step away from everything that's going on and do what you need to be well. And that we might find, a lot of people might find themselves in a place where they're like, oh, I don't really know how to do that. I don't do that on a daily basis. And so finding the tools that we have for our own wellness is so important right now. And that may look really different for different people. And I think oftentimes in these really stressful situations, that's the first thing we throw out, is the stuff we do for ourselves. And it should be the other way around. It should be something that we're putting our energy into first. One way I've heard that sort of referenced, or a metaphor that I've heard used, is sort of like when you're on an airplane, the oxygen mask, they tell you to put yours on first before you help any young
Hmm.
children you might be traveling with. And the same is true when it comes to taking care of ourselves. I've had to remember that even though there's so much need, and the kids that I'm supporting, because I am still supporting these kids just virtually and trying to support parents through that, I have to take a step away and walk. For me, it's walking the dog. It's getting outside in the woods with the dog. And I have to make sure I do that more, not less.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Please do take care of yourself. And for folks out there, if you would like more information about COVID-19 in Vermont, you can visit the Vermont Department of Health's website at healthvermont.gov. That's healthvermont.gov. I think that'll show up on the bottom here. You can also visit my website, Zuckerman4VT.com, for other COVID-19 resources as well. That's our front page pop-up, I believe, as well, with respect to the situation we're facing right now. And I'm Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman. This is one of the many conversations that I'll be having with experts across Vermont during this coronavirus pandemic, and how we can all make it through these challenging times together. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Tanya.